Hey guys, welcome to Drawing with Waffles. Today I am drawing 3 different characters. That's right, it's the Powerpuff Girls! So it's Buttercup, Blossom, and Bubbles! All 3 of them. Anyway, I didn't get Cartoon Network as a child, so I didn't really get to enjoy Powerpuff Girls as much as most people might have. But they always had a special place in my heart. And I remember for, I think it was my 9th birthday, I got like a ton of Powerpuff Girls stuff. So, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that happened. So I actually went through a few pose ideas for all 3 of them. I wanted to make sure I incorporated all 3 of them and their personalities, and still it was sort of, you know, beautiful in its architecture of the piece. That's not the word, but it's escaping me right now, so I'll just use it. So basically what I did was I started them drawing at an angle so that they were like, you know, shooting off towards the top left side of the page. But then when I was, you know, starting to define the sketch a little bit more, I realized it's going to be a lot easier if I just draw them straight up and then I can twist them at the end, since I'm more used to drawing characters straight up anyway. And then I had her originally grabbing Bubbles' shoulder, so she was creating sort of a V shape, but then once I had them all sketched out, I really wanted something, I wanted them to be going in a direction, and I felt like when I pulled Blossom's arm up, like she was, you know, heading somewhere, I really liked that a lot much better. That didn't make any sense. I really liked that a lot better, so that's what I decided to go with in there. She just looked really wrinkly and old, so I ended up erasing some of those extra lines. I had to look up some references to draw her face, since she is looking towards, you know, towards the top of the page, so she's looking up, which I didn't really know how to draw that, since that's something I've never really done before. So I had to look up a few references, and I figured out how to draw it so it looked like the chin was coming out of the neck without it looking like she was looking straight at the camera. And what helped me do that was just drawing, if you rewind now, it's too late now, you'll see I drew like a triangle shape between the neck and the chin, and that really helped me draw her made it look like she's looking up. I think I redo that again when I get to the line art, but for now, you just have to take my word for it. Anyway, here I'm just adjusting her pose, making sure her arm looks like it's the right size, and then I moved on to Bubbles. This hand, I was actually just looking at my own hand when I was drawing that. I think you can tell whenever I look at my own hand when I'm drawing, because it just looks so much bigger, bulkier, and manly. And it's not saying I have a manly hand, maybe I do, I don't know, but when I look at my own, I see, you know, what a hand looks like, whereas if I draw something from memory, it's always much more thin and feminine, mostly because it's kind of an unattainable femininity of a hand, I guess. It's kind of just like that anime girl hand that I draw, whereas if I look at my own, it just looks so much more bulky, which is just more realistic if you really think about it, but I think it's just easier to tell. Like that hand that's grabbing Buttercup's shoulder, I did not use a reference, I just sort of drew a blobby shape, which is why it looks a little bit different than if I used my hand as reference. Here I'm just drawing Buttercup. I think I had the most trouble with drawing this whole thing. It was just her hair. Like, if I think back in my memory of the show, her hair was really spunky, just like her personality. But when I was looking at the reference, her hair like flips up, like really girly. Well, it's not really a flip up. I don't know. Like, if you were to translate the way her hair looks to like a realistic drawing, like I'm sort of trying to do, I mean, it's still really cartoon, but like I'm just trying to give it more shape. It ends up being this like little, like, it's like, I feel like a girl named Sally would have a haircut like this, not a girl named Buttercup. But I think later on when I end up getting to the line art, I take a little bit more of a closer look and I try to make it look a little bit more like Buttercup than this girly squiggly hair that I had originally. I think what helped was I made it cut straight up from the scalp going upwards, and then when it came to that part that's like a curl, I just made it straight. It doesn't look as realistic, but it looked a little bit more like Buttercup, and I still think it's a little off, but it was the best I could do at the time. I think if I tried again, I might be able to get a little bit better. But now we're doing the line art for Blossom. I relate the most with Blossom. I've always been like, around my friends, I'd be like the more mommy of the group. And so I think Blossom would be me if I was in the Powerpuff Girls. When I was younger, I always related more with Bubbles, just because I felt really young, I guess. I don't know. Bubbles is the youngest. Act's the youngest. I mean, they're all technically the same age, but Bubbles acts the youngest, and I always liked her, and I really liked the color blue at the time, and I was going through one of those phases where, like, pink is too girly for me, so I didn't like Blossom, but now I connect a lot more with Blossom. And then Buttercup, like, everyone wanted to be Buttercup. Even if your personality wasn't really like Buttercup, you wanted to be Buttercup, but maybe not everyone relates that way, but that's how I've always felt. Anyway, I'm doing the line art for Buttercup right now. If you look at the line art, you will notice, I feel like a tour guide, if I direct you towards the line art, you will notice that it is not black. It might appear black, but it's not black. It is like a very, very dark navy blue, which I didn't originally do on purpose, because I actually intended this to be another sketch layer because I just wasn't sure about a few things. So I thought, why don't I be safe and just go in with another sketch layer? But I really started liking the way this third sketch layer was looking, so I decided to, you know, just use it as a line art. It's very different than if I had gone ahead and, like, had an intent for it to be the line art, because I would usually close all the shapes, you know. I really like doing that because if you don't close all your shapes, then when you're using the paint bucket tool to color, you end up coloring everything. And you'll notice that when I go into color that I didn't close all my shapes. So there's gonna be like a lot of random flashes of color that fill the whole screen. Anyway, so since the line art was blue from the get-go, I didn't change it until after I had filled in all the colors, I believe. So then after I'd colored them, I realized, you know what, it probably should go in with a darker line art because it wasn't contrasting enough with the colors, and I really was going for a very cartoony style where the lines were dark and black and then the colors were like flat shaded. I ended up shading a little bit of Blossom, but I'm not totally happy with it. I want to kind of go back and get rid of it. But yeah, so the liner ends up being black at the end, but it's not a complete black. I do leave it a little bit with the color. That doesn't make sense, but it still has a little bit of color to it. It's not a complete black, so it's not too harsh, but it's still much, much darker than the color I'm using right now. And I went in with, I don't know why, I just decided to draw Bubbles blowing bubbles because it just fits her playful personality, so I can't really argue with that. I mean, that's why they named her Bubbles, so. Anyway, I decided to add color. So whenever the Powerpuff Girls fly, it makes that like pachoo sound, and then they leave like a streak of their color behind. So I definitely wanted to incorporate that into the picture, and I ended up making it a triangle coming up from the point of Blossom's fingers down. Later, I realized that I don't really like it that way because it just felt like too much of a triangle. You know, I like the triangle shape, but I don't want it to be that obvious. So what I did was I actually erased all of the triangle that was between her very front fingers and like the tops of everyone's heads. So basically the color was only coming out from behind them instead of like just all over the place, which I feel like was a little bit more in line with the story. So if it's and here I gave her the purple eyeshadow. I ended up giving Blossom and Buttercup purple eyeshadow at first, just because, you know, when the Powerpuff Girls close their eyes, there's like these big purple circles. So I thought, you know, that'd be very accurate, so why don't I do it? I just didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. I think it's because I decided to draw them, and I wanted to mention this, don't know I didn't mention it sooner. I wanted to draw them like young children. I didn't want to draw them as adults or anything. I wanted to draw them young. And I think just adding that purple eyeshadow, and since I had already made their eyes so dark so it kind of looked like they were wearing like eyeliner, the eyeshadow and the eyeliner look just was too much for me since they looked a lot younger just based on their body proportions. So that was just like a for me. I go back in later and remove the eyeshadow because I just couldn't handle it. Especially with Buttercup. I don't know, I don't like it. Didn't like it at all. Here I am trying to figure out what's wrong with Buttercup's chin. It just wasn't looking right. I think now that I'm looking at it, I see her ear might be in the wrong spot. So that might be something I should pay attention to in the future. If you notice, you might not have noticed, I didn't use black to color the middle sections of their dresses either, or their shoes. I actually used a color, just a very less saturated, darker version of the color of their dress to color each of their little middle sections of their dress and their shoes. So they actually all have their own color, but it still looks kind of black. If I didn't like mention it, you might not have noticed it. Maybe you would have if you're really attentive. Good for you. But I just wanted them each to have their own colors. I just wanted it to be a little bit more subtle. Subtle's probably not the word. I just wanted the middle sections to not look really harsh though, so I guess that's the word. Anyway, here I'm just adding little hair strands, so I'm finishing it up. I decided I didn't like that she didn't have middle teeth, so I gave her some of those teeth, because she's supposed to be in kindergarten and you don't really lose your teeth till like 1st or 2nd grade, so gave her front teeth back, colored in bubbles. That was funny. And I added a very simple background, because if you actually watch Powerpuff Girls, their backgrounds are, they're very simple. We'll just go with that. They're like backgrounds I would draw. So I decided to go in and draw a background in their style. I didn't really use a reference, it was just from memory, so hopefully it's alright. Here I'm adding that shading I don't really want to talk about. But I also add like a moon up in the sky, and yeah, it's purple shading. Ugh. This was just like a last resort, just like I wanted to see if it would look okay with shading, and it was just not a good idea. Because if you want to do shading, you should really put your mind to it. I didn't feel like doing it at the time, and I think it shows with the way it looks. And this is the finished illustration. Look at that. Look at the Powerpuff Girls, Buttercup, and Bubbles, and Blossom. She still has the shading. I forgot to get rid of it. Oops. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. You can check out some of my other videos if you'd like to. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys all next week. I hope you all have a delicious evening full of waffles. Bye!